All right, so the athlete we chose to discuss today was Kyrie Irving. I'm Carson. We have DeMonte, Walker, Tremaine, Jackson, and Jaden all here presenting, and I'm gonna turn it over to Walker to give us some background on Kyrie.
Yeah, so a little about his background. Kyrie Andrew Irving was born to Drederick and Elizabeth Irving on March 23rd, 1992 in Melbourne, Australia. Unfortunately, Elizabeth passed away when Kyrie was only 4 years old due to sepsis in 1996. Kyrie has gone on to honor her in many ways, such as receiving a tattoo of his mother, as well as naming his daughter Missouri Elizabeth Irving. Kyrie went on to become a professional basketball player in the United States and started his career playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers after being drafted first overall in 2011. He completed his career at Duke University before going professional. Kyrie went on to play for the Boston Celtics, Brooklyn Nets, and is currently with the Dallas Mavericks. Kyrie has been selected multiple times for the All-Star game, as well as receiving All-Star game MVP in 2014. Kyrie won an NBA championship with the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016, as well as receiving a gold medal that year for competing and winning in the Rio Olympics. A little bit more about Kyrie. His father, Drederick Irving, was born in the United States but moved to Australia after playing basketball at Boston University. He left there as the all-time leading scorer and unfortunately did not get picked up to play professional in the United States, but did go play in Australia. Drederick served Kyrie as a coach and as a mentor and played a huge role in his development in academics and athletics. Kyrie is known as a philanthropist and activist, a loving husband and father as well, excuse me. Kyrie's been recognized as an honorary member of the Standing Rock Six tribe, or Sioux tribe, for supporting him throughout charitable events. Kyrie has taken to the public and spoken out about how social justice issues and political issues in the United States affect players. Kyrie Irving now supports and mentors the youth through basketball camps and even creates media content to the extent of acting in the film Uncle Drew. Kyrie is an activist, a mentor, an entrepreneur, and one of the best basketball players to take the court at the professional level.
Okay, so I'm just going to do a little brief overview of his mental health journey. So, and his experiences that shaped how he's a mental health advocate today. So, he was obviously, like we said, he's raised in a single parent household. He lost his mother when he was 4 years old, and then as he got into his career in 2018, he lost his grandfather, which was a big piece of, why he loved and enjoyed the game of basketball. And then, like we mentioned before, he was drafted #1 to the Cleveland Cavaliers back in 2011. So, he's played with four different teams throughout his career, and over the course of that career, he's struggled with injuries, and he's had some severe injuries as well, some surgeries, and all that takes a whole toll on your mental health.
Right now, go and identify some topics that relates Kyrie's mental health journey to topics we've done in class so far. In our margin on depression and motivation, we can go into how Kyrie's mother and grandfather passing. His mother, uh, more importantly, early in life, affects his ACEs metrics, which we'll go into a little bit more. Affected him early as childhood, and then his motivation to play basketball in Boston when his grandfather passed. He took a deep dive into working on himself and to find his love for playing basketball again. Um, as far as the anxiety and external pressures and focus, he was the #1 draft pick, so he had a lot of pressure coming to Cleveland as the #1 draft pick after LeBron left to keep that franchise where it was at. And then when LeBron came back to Cleveland, he experienced a lot of pressure as far as getting to the finals, uh, sustained the injury at the end, and then the next year coming back and winning. So that was a lot of pressure on Kyrie. Um, and then as his leadership role in Boston, as I referenced earlier, he succumbed to that pressure due to the grief of his grandfather. He admitted himself he wasn't the best leader for Boston at that time, so he ended up leaving. And here in this TikTok here, we'll look at he describes how he discovered how he had anxiety and depression through this whole process.
I struggled with anxiety. I struggled with depression, not really knowing what it was. When I was a kid, I've struggled with PTSD, just seeing the things in the environment that I was growing up in. Basketball wasn't just a sport that I wanted to be professional in. It was an outlet for my pain. And then ultimately, as I got older, I learned how to channel that pain into becoming strength and to becoming perseverance and having the will of a champion way before the accolades and the gold trophies. You know, becoming a champion of life is waking up with that gratitude in your heart, knowing you got a chance because you took a breath.
You can go ahead and take over, Carson.
Gotcha. All right, yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Tremaine just discussed, starting with the ACEs. ACEs are something we talked about in class with our lecture. ACEs stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences, in which childs who are exposed to some of the adverse experience you see on the right of abuse, neglect, household dysfunction, they become much more likely to develop diseases such as cardiac diseases, and then are also much more susceptible to struggling to mental health as they grow older. This is a process that doesn't exactly start as a child. It can be something that shows up later in life. But it's something that's really been looked into more deeply recently, with a lot more focus going into it and trying to figure out why maybe certain people struggle with so much anxiety and the negative consequences of these experiences. And so relating this to Kyrie, Kyrie obviously lost his mother at a very young age when he was 4 years old, as Walker talked to us about a little bit. And as you can imagine, that's a traumatic loss for anybody. At 4 years old, you know, Kyrie really probably doesn't have a lot of memory of his mother. And so an obvious traumatic experience. And this is one of those adverse childhood experiences that probably contributed to Kyrie's struggle with anxiety as he grew older, as he got into his late to mid 20s. So just relating that to what we talked about in class here, I relate that. You see the divorce bubble down there in the bottom right. In the presentation that was discussed is also incorporating the loss of any parent. So that obviously incorporates Kyrie's situation with his mother passing. And so related that to our presentation there. Kyrie was deprived of a lot of normal experiences with his mother. I also have another TikTok video I'll show you where he goes in depth and discusses some of the experiences he missed out with his mother.
To give my mom my awards in the NBA. I never got to hug my mom after a 40-point game. I never had my mom teach me how to drive. I never had my mom go to the DMV to go get my driver's license. My mom never took me to AU practice. My mom never took me to have my first drink. My mom never took me to smoke for the first time. My mom never took me to places where I needed the new experience. My mom never told me I was on punishment. And all those things that I didn't have only made me more prepared for the world, because I am a constant reminder that you need to appreciate the life you do have. And I'm not jealous and I'm not envious of anybody that has both parents. I just am aware of how special that is.
So obviously in there, you saw Kyrie talk about a lot of the experience that he didn't get with his mom. And obviously that had to be traumatic for him as he grew up and probably had kids his age discuss different experiences they had. So we really believe that was a big thing that stemmed and created a lot of anxiety for him later in life. And as I'll get ready to talk about a little bit more, before I skip to that, I did want to mention I watched a TED Talk from Nadine Burke-Harris discussing ACEs and their impact over a lifetime, in which she harped on what I previously said about they lead to a multitude of neurological and physical diseases stemming from ACEs. So that can be anxiety, what we believe is Kyrie's instance, or she went in depth to talk a lot about that would lead to obesity, potential cancer, cardiac disease. She even revealed one statistic where it reduces the life expectancy of people who were exposed to many adverse childhood experiences. And so with Kyrie, obviously went through that with his mother, and then later in life, he lost his grandfather, which is really what led him to seek mental help. And he probably experienced a lot of the same traumatic experiences with his mother, but he was older in this instance, probably had a stronger relationship with his grandfather. And this pressure, it was during his time in Boston, it led to him kind of to be taken out of his element a little bit. He wasn't focused on basketball. Basketball was the last thing on his mind. And that's where that comment that Tremaine discussed earlier about how he felt that he let his teammates down in Boston. This was during this time where he had a lot going on. So the traumatic experience we talked about with his adverse childhood experience of his mother, I believe you see a lot of those same effects when he lost his grandfather later in life. And we believe that those two losses contributed to an immense amount of his stress and anxiety and eventually led him to get help after the passing of his grandfather. And my final bullet point to the right is another one of our course materials, Understanding Depression in College Athletes. They discuss the immense pressures that are on athletes aged 18 to 25. This would have been Kyrie up until he left Boston. I believe his last year in Boston, he was 26 years old, so he would have lost his grandfather right around 25, 26, which is exactly in this time window. And so there's immense pressure on athletes, as we know. We have some athletes here that could probably tell you a little bit more about that, but just tremendous pressure on them. And then when you take in traumatic experiences that Kyrie dealt with the loss of his mother and his grandfather, it's easy to see how his anxiety could stem and grow and become a much bigger problem. So just relating that to our two course materials and the TED Talk above, Kyrie, obviously, I think a lot of his anxiety stemmed from these aces we talked about, along with the immense pressures he had on himself to perform in the NBA under the lights, getting paid so much money. And then when you factor in he was dealing with these pressures while also losing his grandfather, I think it's very easy to see how his mental health could have become in such a serious state as it did.
All right, so I'm just going to talk about a little of the inside, kind of what he did that worked, what didn't work, and what he would have personally done differently. So what I kind of learned is what worked for him was just therapy and counseling and speaking your mind and slow it down and acknowledge what is happening. Those two were honestly the biggest two that I've learned from him, because he was saying a lot of times you think you need to hide how you really feel or not speak about what it really is or just kind of understand. But his biggest thing was just slow down and acknowledge what is happening. Also, not suffering in silence and working on holistic and spiritual well-being. When he actually left Boston, he came back there to play, and he had saged the arena, which he used to cleanse the energy of a place he once called home. What didn't work was just shutting yourself down, keeping it to yourself, not getting the help you need from therapy or counseling, and also just trying to battle through it on your own. And he's kind of spoke about how you need to have people around you that you can talk to and just get that help. That kind of goes with what he would have done differently. He would have reached out and got that help. He wouldn't have hidden his shadows. He would have spoke out about it sooner and just slow down and acknowledged. And something like we kind of all have talked about with his grandpa passing away, a big thing he talked about was he wished he would have spoke to his grandfather more, like while he was in the hospital and trying to get better. His contribution to sports psychology, a big thing was it sparked a major change in the NBA. They started to launch mental health programs and mental health professionals at every single team and organization. It also sparked a change in the college programs. What I learned, the mental health best practices that I found on the NCAA website, it said that each member school must facilitate an environment that reinforces physical and mental health within athletics by ensuring access to appropriate resources and open engagement with respect to physical and mental health, which is extremely important now for college athletes. And then kind of like with the video in the top right, at his 2023 More Than Run pickup event in New Jersey, he kind of spoke about and directed all of his attention towards mental health, where he just stressed the significance of seeking help and counseling, which is benefits to professional support through therapy. And you can play the video. You can go to about a minute and
And then over here on team 9, we got the black team. Let's give it up for them real quick. Again, when I started this event in New Jersey, I know you guys can probably can't hear me on the music, but when I started this event in Jersey, I know you can see on the court, it says "Jump and Run." I wanted to get my brothers and my sisters together and be able to do something that meant more than just getting up and down the basketball court. I wanted to be able to impact my community, impact the youth that's going to be playing athletes, that's going to be watching what I do and studying what I do. And the goal is to be able to bridge this gap through basketball to connect all walks of life. So no matter what walks you are, no matter what language you speak, we feel like this is an open space, this is an invited space for you to be yourself. So you see around, you look around to your left and right, you see families, you see community, you see people unified, not only the game of basketball, but also who we believe in. So I appreciate each one of you guys for coming out. Give it up for you guys coming out. Thank you. This is the first inaugural More Than Run here in LA. I couldn't be more people enough. I wish my kids were here as well. I wish my mom, my grandmother were here as well. I'm happy they weren't enjoying this with me because basketball has afforded me so much, but it's given me so much better perspective on life on how you treat other people. Hey, I've been through enough. You please use me as an example. I've been through the fire and brings it out of me. I'm grateful that I didn't do it alone. I had a lot of family to help me. So if you're struggling with your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical health, you need to feel better about yourself. You need to go seek some therapy. You need to go seek some people that know what they're talking about. And with that being said, again, I want to thank each one of you guys. And let's get this game started.
To wrap us up, some things that we've learned from this athlete, and some issues, and how can we help college athletes today with what he's given us, his trauma from childhood. It caused anxiety as an adult, death in his family, worsening his symptoms of just more anxiety, just and always worried about different things. I think if a college athlete has definite family, they should be provided with some of these options that he has, like therapy if they needed it. Just also people around them that should help them become stronger in their thoughts so that they can overcome their trauma while dealing with their trauma. Yeah. One other thing, I think people around the people that are struggling should encourage them, should have people in their corner that should be preaching to them not to isolate themselves so that they don't feel like they're in this tough time alone. I think they should have people around them to encourage them to just let it all out and just get their point across and so they can move on.
Gotcha. Well said. And then this is our works cited page here at the end. Appreciate your time today, Professor. And please email us if you have any questions. Thank you.